Good morning. Welcome to Pivot Point Live. It's Thursday at 8 a.m. Well, slightly later than 8 a.m. Good morning, Tracy. How you doing?
Tardy. Sorry, guys. I know it's normally 8 a.m. I was the one getting off a call with a client, and then I struggled to get in and utilize the technology effectively today. So this is on me. We want to dive right into it today because we have some great content to deliver today. I'm doing great, by the way, Paul, and you're doing good.
I am. So what are we talking
Awesome.
about today?
Okay, so we're going to kind of blend together from last call to this call. We're talking about our ideal client, and then what is the messaging? The messaging. What is the content in the message that we're trying to deliver, maybe to attract the ideal client? What have you heard in the past? What are some mistakes that are made on this? Or some misconceptions on the content messaging?
Well, I guess I'm going to go back to the thing I always say is, what is the problem you solve and who do you solve it for? I think the biggest mistake is probably not understanding that. What do you think?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I did not know. If you don't know your ideal client, you don't know who that is. You've never done the research. Then you're just. I mean, it's kind of like putting a hook in the water with no bait. It's attractive to nobody, right? And then even like I'm not a great fisherman, but I understand the concept that I think for me, the limited amount of fishing experience that I have, when I go to a lake and I don't know what is that lake known for, I mean, like, is that where I'm going to catch this type of fish, whatever, then I don't know what bait to use. And so it's just like, I guess I'll go with a wax worm. I just go put this worm on here because all fish like worms, right? So not knowing exactly, I mean, like, I don't know how to bait the message. And so, like, when you don't know how to bait the message because you don't know really, I mean, like you haven't done the hard work of knowing, okay, this is the problem I solve, but then we're moving forward. Okay, I'm solving it for this person. How does this person going to react when I put this hook, this baited message out there? If it's not speaking to the issues that they have, then they're not biting. And then I'm gonna believe there's no more good clients out there, or all the good fish are taken. No, there's not even any fish in this lake.
So let me ask you this, Tracy, because we're talking a lot in metaphors here. I want to kind of bring this down to brass tacks because you do a lot of restaurant consulting, as it were, and I know there's such a diversity in problem you solve and who you solve it for in the restaurant industry. Let's take a little modeling from your perspective. So you
Okay.
go in, you go into a restaurant, you pick the type. I don't. What what do you do? What do you do to help someone deal with this?
To
Understand
help them deal with their messaging.
to understand their messaging. Yeah, that's what we're ultimately talking about.
Yeah, so if the restaurant, so we're talking about the restaurant is not me, my business trying to speak to them, but them trying to speak to their ideal customer.
That is correct. That's 100% correct. You're helping them. So you're working with them on their messaging, how their marketing is, who their you know who their target client is. So talk to me about the steps that you go through.
Yeah, so like first I'm going to ask exactly those questions about like, hey, who is it that you love coming in here? What qualifies an ideal client for you? So if I took for example Chick-fil-A, Chick-fil-A is like they're ones that pay full price. They don't have to be pumped up, primed up, pampered to come in because they love the quality of the food. They love the hours that they're open. I mean, they're not pushing them. They're not like, hey, we had to increase the prices because everybody had to do that. In fact, Chick-fil-A, I think 3 times last year had to boost their prices. And guess what? They still hit symbol. They're a big target for their store. Even though, I mean, like no one said, like, hey, you raised it. Hey, this used to be 15 cents less, and now it's 15 cents more. I'll never come back here again because that it was never about price to them. So they're about, like their ideal client comes in because they feel that they belong and so forth. So I'm gonna start there, but then understanding like there's always going to be a people issue. If the people behind the counter are not those people that are endorsing those values, then obviously there's going to be a breakdown. But I think that's where it starts, just understanding their messaging from the leader. What kind of person do you love? Like, give me that name. Who's that name? Oh, it's Mr. Morgan. When Mr. Morgan comes in, like, okay, tell me about Mr. Morgan. Well, he comes in for breakfast every day. He comes in, well, 5 days a week. He's coming in 5 days a week. He's ordering the same thing from the menu. I mean, like when he comes in and we know him on a first name basis, he never has said anything about the price changes or anything like that. And we're thinking about that's your ideal customer because we've done something that's brought him in. That's in short, I'll start with that name and then they begin to describe that person to me. And then we start to develop that person.
So how do you find the data on that person? Let's say you're not a Chick-fil-A. You don't have 400,000 locations. You're not going through shrinkflation and trying to grow smaller chickens. You're just opening the doors. Okay. How do you find that person? What do you do to understand the demographics in the area that you're opening your restaurant at?
Oh, okay. Now that's a great. I mean, because we're talking about a startup. I mean, we haven't even opened the door, so we'd have
using Chick-fil-A. They've done all the work that I'm talking about, or that I want to get to give people, an idea of how to go about this. So let's go with a startup because nothing's done. You're in, there's no information. Yeah. So what do you do?
Then, okay, so
what helps you decide what your menu is going to be? That's the number one thing in the restaurant. If barring, I'm going to open, a restaurant because I grew up learning how to cook this kind of food. How do I develop a really targeted menu and target customer from scratch?
Okay, man, Paul, that's a great line. I'm glad we've taken it this direction. What I found, so I've got two clients. One's a baker, and one's in Italian, and this is amazing. So they're Spanish people, but they love Italian food, and
there you go.
They're very passionate about Italian food, but their passion is not just putting, they're making their own pasta. I mean, they're creating this whole thing. And so their ideal client is going to be somebody that's passionate about the same things that they're passionate about. And so they're not looking at, they opened this and they opened this up in around the New York City area. And so they're not, I mean, obviously the clientele is going to be big because there's a lot of Italian influence in, Sicily or whatever. So their demographics is going to be pretty large. The baker, on the other hand, she just is passionate about baking goods and being creative with that thing. So she's looking at those that appreciate that kind of quality of work, but she hasn't really defined her demographic, and yet it works. And that's what's bizarre to me. I'm like, the Italian, I mean, they're Spanish people, but they're going after a group that's just huge. And I would think that man, there's enough Italian restaurants in New York.
You think?
Yeah, exactly. But the demographic is so big, and it's, even though it seems like it's saturated, it hasn't really been untapped. So on both sides, one is passionate about it and is done. They're opening their store in a place that responds well to Italian food. The other one hasn't done any demographic at all, no work at all, but is just passionate about what she does, and her creative approach makes people say, "Man, I want that," because that's a different way to make a muffin. Or that's a different way to make a cake or whatever that she's bringing in. And having no data, just having those creative, that passion is driving her forward. She's only tapping into the people that love baked goods. And so that's a starting place for her. But it's working and she's scaling.
Great. So let's move to a different industry then. Just because using a restaurant, and you're talking about a passion for food, and you're going to try to attract your customer base. Mm-hmm. And that's it works in some arenas. You do have to figure out whether you're getting through the newness of a restaurant in an area where everybody's trying it out, and whether it has sustainability over the long term. So that's a question that's obviously only answered in time.
This is exactly why I loved this dialogue, because the dialogue, you're absolutely right. When you said you have to outlive that newness, because That's the point where people struggle. So the lady that comes in and she does this baked goods and everything, and everybody loves the newness and like, oh man, that's a different way of doing that. Another restaurant is in the around Philadelphia, and they're in bagels, and they tried out wings, like bagels and wings, but the wings did awesome, but the cost and the time involved in it, it was not sustainable. And so they had to like they take an approach like this is a seasonal item because they had this big craving for it, but then the craving went away. People stopped buying as much wings, but they were still producing them, so they had a lot of waste. And the time, it just didn't make sense. So they stopped doing it. Say, hey, one more Friday and the wings go away. So one big last push, and then like see you next football season or whatever.
So all their wings clients, not all of them, but a portion of them go away until next February when the wings come back out. Right. So that's a risk in that. Ultimately, getting back to the opening of this is how do you define your message to your customer, right? And the number one thing is identifying who your perfect customer is. And I remember last time I used an example of the dartboard, right? You want to hit the 50 right in the middle, and then all the other hits are just points on the board. Okay. And how do you define that? And to your point, you create what we call an avatar, right, in marketing. And then you have to validate your assumptions. So how do we go and validate our assumptions? Well, we go find a bunch of our avatars. Where do they hang out? They hang out in social media. They hang out in other places. And I want to get a bunch of those people in some way, shape, or form exposed to my product and service to validate my assumptions about my market. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm tracking.
Okay. So why do we do that? Well, if we're selling products and markets on the internet, or if we're trying to attract people to our stores, we're probably going to spend a ton of money on advertising and marketing and all this stuff. And to throw all that money out when you have a message that doesn't resonate because you haven't tested the validity of your message is throwing a lot of money in the garbage, right? So you will need to validate that message by taking and finding people that are your avatar, that perfect customer that you've identified, and validate your messaging. Once you validate your messaging and it's validated, now you can pour the gas on it, and because that message is going to resonate.
I wonder. So validating the message, we're talking about food service, but I think in like, what is the commonality, whether it's in food service or whatever industry? One of my messagings is I believe that extraordinary customer service is the difference maker in no matter what business or industry that you're in, because that's a commonality, even though the exchange, the transaction may be different. There's like some sales cycles. I mean, like the sales cycle for getting a cheeseburger is so much shorter than selling a house.
Yeah.
I mean, you got 90 days or 45 days at the minimum on selling a house or whatever, but like it's 45 seconds for the transaction for a cheeseburger in a drive-thru that's operating, max capacity. So like you're validating the message. Like I think that everybody wants to be treated with honor, dignity, and respect. Yeah, they want that product and they want it quickly or urgency as fast as possible because life operates at speed. But I mean, validating your message, like don't forget that component of taking care of, your customer with amazement. I mean, like you're amazing them. So I think like for me, I'm going to be leading with that, like with my product.
Well, and one of the things, if you want to go back to restaurants, one of the things that's very important is you identify that avatar, right? Startup, and then you need to do a market study, right? If I'm opening a 5-star restaurant that's $100 a plate on average, I'm not going to open up in a town of 15,000 people.
Right. Totally true.
Right.
You
So
want
defining my avatar is extremely important. And then I need to see what my market saturation is. I need to understand, let's say I'm opening up in a town of 60,000 people and there's 7 5-star restaurants in that 60. So the question is, I'm going to need to pull the people that can afford to eat at my restaurant away from those existing restaurants. Is my product, as far as food, good enough and different enough to be an alternative, or am I battling on the same round? So let's say 5 steakhouses, right?
Yeah.
What it's like, if I'm aimed at that target market, I really need to understand what the market density is, because this is a drive-in, this is a seated restaurant, so I need to understand market density, where that market's going. Need to understand how well all the other 5-star restaurants are doing in the area. If all of them are about to close, what is the risk level there, that I'm going into a market that can't, to your point earlier, sustain? I'm going to be really popular the day I open.
Yep.
And 3 months later, after everybody's, spent their $400 to eat at my restaurant, what's the sustainability plan? How am I going to keep people coming in the door afterwards?
Yep.
Right.
So true. So true. And I know we're more or less talking about brick and mortars. I mean,
Yep.
I was thinking about, like, I wrote this down. Is this the right location to plant my dream? I want my dream planted. I want to work the soil, plant my dream, and let it prosper and flourish. But to your point, if it's a brick and mortar, then there's a lot of strategy and research to where you're not throwing money down the drain that's going to give you this false sense of security for the first 3 months, and then it peters out, and now your dream has become a nightmare. Because sustainability, that's a great term. Just consider, like, can this location sustain the dream? Suppose we're starting up in this virtual, this e-commerce, about the messaging that goes into that, because that would be a different level of research, wouldn't it?
Well, I mean, it's the same idea, though. A lot of the marketing, quote, pre-work, is very similar. Number one, what's the problem I solve? Who do I solve it for? Who's that primary customer? Who's that avatar? Where do they hang out? All right. Okay. I come up with that avatar. So here's my 50 on the dartboard. So it's Mary Jo. She's 35 to 50. She likes beauty. I guess I'm selling face cream. She enjoys going to book club. She enjoys pickleball. Okay, so I've defined this. Now I got to go out and find all the pickleball and book clubs out on social media. I get in there. I start to engage with them with my philosophy or messaging concept, and see if I'm getting into conversations, if I'm gaining interest on that. Okay, great. I've just validated it. I got 20 people over the past 5 days that are really engaging with me on this product, and now I'm starting to pull them into my product. This message seems to resonate. Now I've built out my landing pages to get them in. I tighten up my messaging. Now I pour the gas on. I start throwing ads out in increments. I watch my conversion rates. If they're not converting, then I go back. Apparently my messaging isn't resonating well. I go back, I do it again. I get them into the landing page with the new messaging, and then look at my conversion rates. Oh, great. It went up a little bit. Not to industry standards, though. Need to get up to industry. So need to do a little bit more tweaking, go out there with the tweaking. Boom. Now I'm starting to convert at industry. Guess what I'm going to do now? It's time to throw the money at the advertising, because now I've got the track record. I've got the data to validate, as we said before, the messaging. Now I can pour the gas on and start converting and selling my product.
Mm-hmm. And the cost of not following, you laid out this beautiful series of events that you do. The cost of that, you're like you said, you're throwing money away, and that money, and especially in the startup phase, that is I mean, like, all money obviously has value, but in that startup phase, You have to be putting that money exactly where it's going to generate the most revenue. Something that popped for me when you were talking about that series, and you used the illustration of face cream, and then you said, hey, they're playing pickleball and stuff like that. And I was thinking about these ladies that are out there doing this, because generally speaking, it's not a man that's looking for the face cream. But like when you're validating this thing, yeah, I know, like oil our beard for those gray hair flyaways. But
oh, thank you, I appreciate that.
But I was thinking like sometimes when you're in that process of validating, I found this happen in my own business where I was trying to validate a product, right? And so it's this face cream. I know they're book clubs, they're pickleball, and then like I put this like second thing in there, like oh, and also I have this sample that when you order the face cream, I have this sample of this hand lotion, and it works wonders, and it does this kind of things. And somebody's thinking like, oh, pickleball. I end up getting these calluses, and I really don't want to have these calluses, but I want to play pickleball. And this thing does. So it's like the secondary item actually was what they're looking for, even though I was after the face cream.
There you go, hand cream.
And it's like, oh man, the product, it should be in reverse. The hand cream is the lead, and the face cream is the second money. And you don't know that until you put it out there and you test it. Now you know, like, oh man, more people were buying the hand lotion because they love that product in this ideal client than it was and I had no idea that I thought people would love, they want to, treat their customers, give them amazing experience and everything. And guess what happened? No, they want better processes that are duplicatable, that are repeatable by their team members. Oh, and then also we engineer those processes where they're taking care of their customers. But I had it in a reverse order. I was leading with the amazing customer experience, thinking about the customers, but they needed a better process, and we flipped it around. We just engineered the process to where it would take care of and value the customers. So I was able to validate. What's that?
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah. So sometimes your second money product but you don't know those things until you do what you said, your market study, and you validate your assumptions. My assumption was, man, every company wants to take care of the customers. Every company's struggling and they need to make more money. They need to have more revenues, and they may not be thinking that way.
Yeah, it's and what's the big takeaway from this, right? You got to pay attention to the data. And if you're not collecting data and analyzing it to make decisions, then you're just throwing spaghetti up against the wall and hoping it sticks.
Yep.
Right. So it's really, really important to take these steps to understand who you're selling to, what their problems are, and go and validate your assumptions. That's probably the biggest, I think one of the biggest things I heard. I had a client not too long ago. They were pumping $8,000 a month out on Google ads for months. I'm talking like months.
Wow.
And they were getting 0 conversions. And it was like, they didn't understand the messaging. Their messaging was too broad. They were trying to capture an entire market instead of a bunch of little niches. So everybody was confused by their messaging. And what we did was we went out and we split their message into 3 very specific landing pages with a very tight message to one of the 3 avatars, right? So I always talk about message congruity. Like your message needs to be congruent with your landing page, which needs to be congruent with your purchase page, right? And there's no confusion all the way through. So they had no call out because they didn't understand the who they solve it for.
Yeah.
Once we identified the who we solve it for, we found that there was 3 very specific avatars. So 3 dartboards instead of 1.
Mm-hmm.
And we figured out what the 50 looked like on the dartboard for each of those avatars and brought them out. They ended up converting after a month, they were converting at double industry rate because they typed their message down to the very specific avatar. You have to pay attention to who you solve it for. There may be multiple who you solve it fors within your product, to your point, and you have to message problem language to those specific avatars so that you can bring them in. A lot of people who have a problem don't know they have a problem. So having a solution for a problem they don't know they have doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
They have to identify with your problem.
Yeah. So I the old approach in leveraging your products of the done with you, done for you, the do it yourself. So you got this like pyramid, and the most expense that you pay is the done for you. But then there's the done with you crowd, and there's the do it yourself crowd. And some people are coming in to your business, and at the base, probably the cheapest products that you have is going to be the just do it yourself. Hey, this is what we've given you. Go out and do it. And here's the YouTube video. Figure it out. And then the do it with. Oh, you want my help? Okay, I'll coach you along the way. And then the top is like, oh, you want us to do it? Okay, we'll build all this stuff for you. But there's a messaging in each one of those things because there's a specific group of people that are coming to your business with that in mind.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, so what's the big takeaways today?
The big takeaway for me is like identifying your perfect customer. We talked about that in for a full length episode. And by the way, if you're watching this right now and you don't know that episode, go back to Pivot Point Live from last week. We touched on that a lot. But then creating validating your assumption. I believed that people wanted an extraordinary customer experience. Well, that's what every business wants to give. And that wasn't true. But I didn't know that until I validated that assumption by going out into the marketplace, doing those studies, offering those things, and to find out, oh, wait, it's actually the reverse is true. There's something else in the marketplace. So for me, it's validating the assumption. Because if you, like the company you said, they were all in. They were all in on their assumption, just believing that and they weren't following, maybe they weren't tracking the data, or life's giving you data all the time. We're getting data right now from those that are watching us, asking questions. Life is giving us data, and if we're not paying attention to the data, we're going to miss out on the opportunities of truly serving people what they want. And how long are they really going to stand at the front door if we're not giving them what they want? I'm thinking about the data. What's the takeaway for you?
I got to agree with the data. Pardon me. One of the things I would say, you need to find a way to capture the data, right? Mm-hmm. And be able to analyze it. I think if you don't understand, you need to go back to the drawing board and figure out who your perfect customer is. And if you've got 3 or 4 perfect customers, right? You have a product or service that fits a lot of different demographics. Once you figure that out and start looking at your data, then, maybe you need to split your messaging and tie it down and get it tighter with each individual avatar that you serve. Once you do that, then you can streamline your messaging. Can be the same landing page for all 3, but your entry points may be different. Your call outs may be different. Mm-hmm. You might be running 3 very different specific ads calling out very specific avatars. Yeah. 2 things that make ads work, right? Just a solution message does not. Problem language calling out a specific avatar gains interest. Okay. And bringing that to a message congruent landing page and understanding the conversions for each is going to help you be able to adjust your message and your landing pages and your messaging to gain those customers. So I think that's the big takeaway is go look at your data. And if you don't have data, go do a historical study on what you're doing. Get the data, put it together, and once you do that, the picture is going to unfold in front of you of what you need to do next to scale your business.
Yeah, I think you maybe unintentionally answered the question from one of our viewers. How do you usually get your audience attention by your message?
Yeah, I think I just answered that.
I think you just answered that. I don't know if you saw that message on there, but like that question, you just nailed that. By your takeaway.
Yeah. So that's great. All right. We are at the end, my friend.
Yes, absolutely. That's
So
I hope that was a big service for. I love our discussions. I hope that was a big service for those our viewers that write those things. By the way, our viewers out there, is there something that you're looking to know more of from Paul and myself? We would love to know that. So make sure you put in the comments of things that you'd like to know more about for your business that would serve you specifically. We'd love to speak into those.
outstanding. Well, it's another Thursday, and we will see you next week. Same bat channel, same bat time. Pivot
I
Point
look
Live.
forward to it. Look forward to it.